What is up, and I welcome each and every one of you back to a brand new video. I am posting on a Monday. Stars must have aligned. The apocalypse is probably coming in the next couple of days, but there's a lot of things to look forward to in the fall season. Chief of which, of course, being No Nut November, but aside from that, there's also the 58th straight same exact Call of Duty game, and the 34th straight same exact 2K game. But aside from that, something has piqued my interest over the last couple of days, and that is Age of Empires 4 RTS game. Essentially, Rise of Nations was stuck in the medieval era pretty much, but yeah, been having a lot of fun with it over the last couple of days. Think I can make myself a review right now, and as always, like, subscribe, comment down below whether you want me to actually do a playthrough or a stream of Age of Empires 4, and let's get right into the review. Now, considering my name is the Civ Lifer and not the RTS Lifer, I'm assuming some of you don't know what an RTS is. RTS stands for real-time strategy. Essentially, it's kind of like Civ in a way where you are building up your empire throughout the ages, except an RTS game is more micro-focused where you move individual units, more tactics than anything. You're collecting resources, use those resources to travel through the ages, upgrade some units, get big chunky Chad-type units to take out the beta neighbors, essentially, is what an RTS game is. This is sort of like Civ 6 reversed in a way where it's really mainly focused on multiplayer, considering the fact that games are a lot faster, not taking really up to more than an hour or an hour and a half. Some other RTS games are Rise of Nations, one of them. 0 AD, for those of you who, it wasn't a lot of people. 0 AD, I guess you could search it up. It was a crowd-funded RTS game that really never took off. I played that a little bit, but I've never really tried an Age of Empires game. I've never really played AoE 2, and this is really the first RTS game that I was kind of excited about. Been playing it obviously for the last couple of days, and it is reverse Civ 6 because the multiplayer is the main thing about an RTS game. You can obviously do quick matches against AI, and the AI for the most part is a little better than the Civ AI, but it's still AI, of course. If you get good at the game, you'll be able to do whatever, but essentially it does focus on multiplayer. You know, conquering your neighbors and fighting in real time for a couple hours is a lot of fun if you don't have friends, and if you don't have friends, like most strategy gamers, I am one of them, of course, you'd always play online, but really the main thing about this game is its online atmosphere. It is really fun to play with other people, and aside from the fact that I've been curb stomped and absolutely goat-seed for every game I tried to play online, the vote footage you're checking is easy bots, of course. I think this game's pretty fun. I think it's a really good game. Let's take a quick look at the 8 civilizations you can play. Now, it really doesn't matter too much which one you pick, as really the objectives of the game are fairly similar, and you're really not going to have to go out of your way to do different strategies with each one, but we'll go alphabetical order, starting with the Abbasids. A quick rundown, obviously, they're decently difficult. They have a golden age, improving production research speeds. They also have the House of Wisdom, which gives them unique technologies, and when it comes to military, they are really good with cavalry and gain bonuses against cavalry troops, and they do have some strong war elephant units, so they are pretty fun. Aside from that, you have the Chinese, who are a little difficult. I'd say one of the most difficult civs. They don't really have a focus. They can really shift it across the ages. They have a really good amount of range units. They have repeating crossbowmen. For those of you who've played Civ 5, think Truco News. They got fire lancers, grenadiers, and nest of bees. Adopt gunpowder early in the game for devastating effect, is what the game says. They also start with extra villagers and faster build time, so if you know what you're doing, the Chinese can be very strong. You got the Delhi Sultanate. It's another really tough civilization for the most part. It's really focused on culture, and research is free, but at a slower rate. You also gain free weapons from constructions of fortifications, which is really good. They have a scholar unique unit who essentially speeds up technology if they're placed inside of a mosque. Their only unique military unit is a war elephant, but they are pretty strong. They're really not the biggest military focused, more of turtling up and getting culture and science. The English are pretty much the beginner's choice, the simple beginner. Think of Rome for Civ 5, or really just the basic. They have really good defensive units. Their villagers can actually fire arrows too, so they are one of the best early defenders in the game. They do have faster attacks from castles and keeps. Their longbows do have faster attacks if you are close to a keep. The man-at-arms units is a really fun unit because they do have a bonus against ranged units or a defensive bonus. They can build farms for 50% less wood, and they do have extra efficiency from farms near mills, which is pretty strong. But let's move on to the French, who are essentially the cavalry. They have really, really good cavalry raiders. They can get knights and era earlier than everyone else, so that's really strong. They're really less focused on food production, but they do have a powerful economy with cheaper drop-offs. They do gain bonuses from defensive keeps and forts, so essentially the French are, if you want to just build a couple cavalry, raid the enemy, obliterate the enemy, and let's move on to the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire, which ironically is not holy, nor Roman, nor an empire, is decently, it's not really the hardest civ. They're really focused on religion, which is kind of, I found it a little hard being a new player, but they do get extra gold from relics, so they get some money. They have really good defense, and anything under the influence of a town center will get bonuses, and units end up being cheaper. They have royal knights and war galleys, making them a pretty good naval civ as well. You obviously have the Mongols. Everyone knows what the Mongols are. Mounted archers. You could kite for days. I mean, at this point, you might as well be 5 years old on a sunny day outside with your brand new kite, because these guys can kite the crap out of anybody. I mean, my God. They're really focused on war and expansion. They can't build walls, so essentially Trump's bonus is wasted on the Mongols. They do have a maximum population and don't need houses, which is a really fun mechanic. You don't gather stone either, but you make it from an uvu. They're pretty hard, honestly. I'd say they're one of the hardest civs, but they can be really strong if you are sort of an advanced RTS type player. And then finally, we could talk about the Rus. The Rus are not as difficult as some people say they are. They make great use of resources. They get bonuses from lumber camps and wooden fortresses. They also have hunting cabins, which operate as a mill, but you also get gold from them. They have some unique ships, which is pretty cool. I didn't think the Russians were good with the Navy, but they really have a good amount of spread across everything. Warrior monks and Streltsy gunpowder units are pretty strong as well. Now, the unique thing about this game is they do have a historical campaign. The historical campaign is pretty fun. There really are only 4 of them, though, so it is limited on what you could do single-player-wise, but I'd really say this game is kind of like a Call of Duty game in a way where it's really, or Hearts of Iron, where it's really just mainly focused on multiplayer. That's really where the majority of your playing time is going to be, but the historical campaigns are pretty fun and do provide a change of pace from regular RTS games. There are 3 different victory conditions. There's a domination victory, a wonder victory, and a sacred site victory. So essentially, you could start your own game, a sort of skirmish game, where you could put yourself up against however many opponents you want, with the maximum being up to 8 different map types. Again, it's just creating your own custom game, kind of. And the 3 victory conditions, the domination, you have to take out everyone's city center and their major buildings. So when you level up to the next age, you have a choice between a couple different buildings. You have to take all of those out. I just can't remember what they're called, man. I'm an absolute idiot. But the sacred site victory is a little easier to explain. You use religious units to capture the sacred sites. You need control of all of them. However, you can uncontrol a secret site from somebody else, not capture it, but if somebody else has a secret site, I send in military units, I kill his priest. Again, no one ends up being in control of the sacred site. I don't get control of it. It has to be religious units, but military units can kill the religious units and take back control of the sacred site, essentially. You need control of all sacred sites, which is a little harder than you would think, especially considering you need to keep a force in each one in order for you to prevent the AI or enemy players from taking it back from you. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the good and the bad of the game. Now, the good, graphics are good, right? They're not great or anything, it isn't some sort of 4K immersion technology. There aren't any sweaty NBA players to convince you that the game's a lot more graphically better than the last year's game. But compared to an RTS game, like I usually play Rise of Nations and Age of Empire 2 and 3, they're much better. I do really enjoy the graphics. They also have really big weapons like arrows or bows and swords and stuff like that. So it does definitely, it's a lot better distinction than a lot of other games. Other than that, the multiplayer is great. It's really fun. There are some bugs, of course, but the multiplayer, for the most part, has been excellent. It's a lot better than Civ's multiplayer, no doubt about that. The final thing I'd say is good about it is you can play on low-end computers, so it isn't really the most intensive type game, despite the fact that it's taking 240 gigabytes to download. My God. But it really isn't the hardest game. If you don't have the best computer, you could still play this game reasonably well on standard graphic settings. But yeah, I'm really not going to take too much about how it compares to other RTS games, because the only other game I've really played is Rise of Nations, which is a long time ago. But yeah, it does definitely do a lot of things better than Rise of Nations. I do enjoy the fact that you do have to sort of more focused on early raiding, whereas in Rise, I'd usually just wait till the last era and just nuke everybody to smithereens. But let's go ahead and move on to the bad. The bad is there's no mods. So really a lot of computer games, especially in this day and age, are really focused on mods, especially now when like games usually release sort of bare bones. Think of Civ 6, Civ 5, Humankind, Old World even, and Age of Empires 4. It does sort of suffer from that bare bones release. We'll get to that in the future, but it doesn't really have any mods. They said there is going to be mods in the future, though, in the next coming months, so this really isn't the biggest gripe. Next up, I wrote limited sort of win cons. It sort of does get repetitive over a couple of days when you're playing this game, because, again, right, like, I'm going to use Civ as an example here, even though they're not really the same kind of game. In Civ, there's 48 different Civs and different strategies, but a lot of this does have to do with the fact that, especially in this day, games are bare bones, so even Civ before only had 20 civs when it released, and the victory types didn't have a diplomatic victory. So again, these it's not really the biggest thing in the entire world, but it just means that you're really probably going to play it for a couple weeks and then wait for the most people at least, and then wait for the expansion packs. After that, it has longer times, I've read, than Age of Empires 2 and a game like Rise of Nations. So what that means is it does take a lot longer to research and build military units. So it's sort of a slower pace than most games than Age of Empires 2. This is something I've sort of noticed, and I have actually read from some reviews online. But the final thing is you can't really set hotkeys as well. Some buttons are sort of locked into a specific hotkey. It doesn't really recognize mouse buttons for the most part, so if you are a type of RTS player who does love doing hotkeys and stuff like that, you're kind of going to be disappointed. But that's pretty much been the good and the bad. Let's go ahead and move on to what I think. Is this game worth it or not? Huge shout out to Cash Christian, Ben Omby, John Blair, Jackson Perez, Adam Mester, Empyrean, Polska Bob, and Jeff Yutzler. And a huge shout out to Kim Cosmos, Mick James, JH, Polaris Gaming, Robert, and Overflow of Amenities.